friend. Thank you so much for coming on the show here today. Really excited to just reconnect and chat with you a little bit. Could you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I always start with soccer. Actually,
Yes.
the
Okay.
the origin story is always my story with soccer. As a
Okay.
little soccer player growing up, I fell in love with sport, and that's really my story and background, particularly when it comes to like my body and movement and strength. Sport and soccer was my first love. And it has literally been kind of the backbone for my story and like the thread that runs through it all. It's why I became a coach. It's why I started my business. It's how I met my husband. Like soccer has opened so many doors for me that is truly the beginning of my story.
I love it. I love it. Okay. So what led you to the world of physical preparation, right? I'm assuming it was soccer related as well,
Mm-hmm.
but how did you get started in this whole space?
So it's so funny because I actually went to school and thought I would be a lawyer. I took the LSATs
Oh,
and deferred for
okay.
a year. And at the time, I was a Division I college soccer player. I had always played competitive soccer, very high levels. And it never occurred to me that like coaching could be a career.
Mm,
So
really?
yeah, I just don't think I saw a lot of strong females doing it at
No.
really high levels. And I think when you don't see it, you don't understand what the possibilities
Sure.
are for you.
Sure.
So I had kind of floundered for a bit. I was working at a law firm through school, took the LSATs, and was like, something in me was like, I'm not, just not quite sure. So I deferred for a year and started as a volunteer coach at my alma mater. Fell
Okay.
in love with coaching, and like literally the rest is history. So I thought I was going to be a Division I head coach. So really went down the coaching at at the collegiate level for many,
Hmm.
many years, which kind of turned into this hybrid strength and conditioning role as well. So I was an assistant coach for many years, coaching the defenders, the back line. I was a center back and got all the coaching certifications, all the stuff. Well,
Yeah.
in the world of collegiate strength and conditioning, particularly for women, when I was coming up, there weren't a ton of, it was really siloed.
Okay. Yeah.
The coaches in the strength room weren't really interested in the women's soccer team.
Yes.
They
Yes.
weren't real high priority. And so I was like, cool, I'm interested in this. How can we
Right.
fit together the on field training with what's going on in the weight room? Because that is a critical piece. And
Yep.
I think there was a lot of intersection, a lot of crossover between what needed to happen in the weight room, what wasn't happening in the weight room, and how that translates to on field. So I
Yeah.
dove deep into, okay, how can I program in the weight room? How can I keep athletes strong, fit, healthy? And how does that translate into on field training? Because it was like they'd go into the weight room and try and do a 1 rep max test.
Yep.
You're like, well, how does that translate into actual performance? So I
Sure.
started in this hybrid role then of like performance management. I was writing all the off-season programming, was going into the weight room and doing the programming for the soccer team. And I was on the field with them. I was traveling with them. I
That's
was
cool.
managing and
That's
looking
cool.
at their minutes. God, before it was like the in thing, I was doing heart rate monitoring and GPS tracking and looking at HRV and marrying all of these things together for
Hmm.
performance. So that's where I got like the strength and conditioning start, because I was this sport coach that really wanted to enhance performance. And you do that through good
Yeah.
strength and conditioning, but the performance piece, because they're a soccer team, right? You want them to perform in their sport. So how do we
Yep.
support that performance? That's like, it was really fun. That's where I got my start.
Yeah. No, I love that. And it's really interesting. First off, I see why you and Dave get
Yes.
along.
That's where we
Talking about
met.
GPS and
Yes.
okay.
So we
Okay.
met because he was on the coaching staff at my alma mater. So for those of you
Okay.
that are listening, my husband is in pro sports, and I'm a little bit biased, but he is the best of the best,
He's pretty good.
and he's pretty good. And what's interesting, I'm sure we'll dive deeper into some of the behind the scenes and the whys. It was actually like a pain point for me towards the beginning of my career because
Mm.
I would enter spaces and enter professional settings, and I would get introduced as Dave Tenney's wife. Oh, this is Dave Tenney's wife. And
Uh-huh.
and because people knew who he was, particularly in the sport world, the sport performance world, like the sports science world, I was trying to do GPS and heart rate and like kind of similar things to what he was doing, but in the women's collegiate level where it was very new.
Yeah.
So when I would get
Yeah.
introduced, it's like, oh, this is Dave Tenney's wife. It was just like, oh, fuck, like, what do I have to do to like prove myself? Like being married to
Right.
this man does not like qualify me. And I like definitely went down the rabbit hole of like getting every certification and doing all of this stuff to be like, see, I do know these things.
Right. Right. No, I respect that.
Yeah.
I respect that. And it's funny too. You talk about people not wanting soccer. This is how I kind of got started as well,
Mm.
in the sense that when I was at Ball State, the first couple teams I got were all the cast off teams that nobody wanted,
Mm-hmm.
right? My first team was women's volleyball. Nobody wanted to train women's volleyball. Then it was men's volleyball. Then it was women's soccer. Like, look, that's how I literally got my start. I'm a volunteer. I'm not even a GA.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'm supposed to have teams, but that's how I was getting teams. And I just remember Fridays, I thought it was amazing. It was chaos. Like if you walked in to the weight room in like 2001, 2002 at Ball State, 3 o'clock on Fridays, it was me and 28 soccer players,
Yes.
28 girls just running around. It was madness, but I loved it. I
Yes.
was like, nobody else wants to work with these girls. I'm going to make them the best that I can. It was
Yes.
so much fun.
I think that's one of the pieces that's really missing in the online space is the lack of in-person experience. And I'm not saying like, oh, you have to have these things to be a good
Right.
performance coach or, run a successful online business. But that in-person experience of like, I've got a roster of 28 girls. Some of them are like starters. They have to be on the field for 90 minutes and others will never be
Right.
on the field. They have to stay fit somehow. Like you have these different categories then even within your teams that you're not training these players all the same. And they're all coming up to you in the weight room like, how much should I lift? And what about this? And this is bothering me. And
Right.
I'm tight here. And my trainer said this, but coach said, and you're just like, okay, cool. You do this. Go, like there's that like trial by fire of, yeah, nobody else is going to take this
Yes.
team. I'm going to figure it out. For
Yep.
me, I was lucky because I had also played the sport and I'd played it at a
Sure.
high level. And so I knew
Yep.
what it felt like to be exhausted after a Friday, Sunday game.
Yep.
That type of experience allowed me to also gain their trust. When
Yep.
I would step on the
Yeah.
field and we'd be
Huge.
demoing things, you're like, okay, well, I can step in. And they were like, oh, okay, this chick can play. And I think that type of
Right.
experience allows your players to really trust you. And for me, that's a huge
For
thing.
sure. For sure. Okay, so walk me from then, right? Like this hybrid sport / sport performance coach to where you're at now. Talk to me about the career journey and the arc that's gone on there, because that's pretty cool.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that we mentioned Dave because honestly, just by his career trajectory has kind of really dictated my career trajectory.
Right.
We just got married and he had taken a job with the Sounders. So we ended up in Seattle and I was like, all right, I'm going to apply to every school in Seattle, literally every school. Like I will work for free. I'll be your volunteer. Do you have a GA position? That's how I started at Seattle University as a GA and worked, there for almost 9 years in that program.
Oh, wow.
Well, during that time, Dave was building his career with the Seattle Sounders. They won an MLS Cup. They were winning the Open Cup. Like, he was thriving. He got an opportunity to go work in the NBA. It's so interesting because like none of this, like this is like all the behind the scenes of like
Yeah.
Allison and like the family piece. Cause I have gotten asked, are you a single mom online? Like Dave is nowhere on my page in my business at all. Like, and that is
Yeah.
his choice, my choice. And also that like pain point of like, I don't need my husband to like validate me in my business and what I do.
Sure.
But he
Sure.
got an opportunity, a really great career opportunity to go work in the NBA, which was a big jump going from MLS and soccer to NBA and basketball. And we moved
Yes.
from Seattle to Orlando, and it kind of took me away from soccer. And at that
Yep.
time, our kids were young. They were still little. I have 2 daughters. So when we moved from Seattle to Orlando, they were like in pre-K and like second grade. Like they were little.
Yep. They were little. Yeah. I
And
remember.
it was like, well, like, I can't get back into, I don't want to be driving all over to like youth soccer practices to try and get a coaching job. There was only like 2 or 3 colleges in the Orlando area. And it was just not on the table for me to stay in
Yeah.
soccer. And honestly, I was ready. I think I was
Yep.
ready to be done with soccer. Kind of how athletes are like, you know, I'm ready to be done with my career, and they retire and they have that like that feeling, that knowing of like, I'm done. I'm complete.
I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah.
I
Sure.
really felt that way with my soccer coaching career at that point. I had started my online business as like a little bit of a side hustle, was doing some in-person stuff. And that break from Seattle U, from soccer was like, oh shit, I have all of these skills, this expertise, this experience. I can really take this into the online world and set myself apart. And that's what I did.
Right.
So it was in 2018 where I was kind of online. It was like before the whole online coaching thing was like a big
Right.
fucking boom. And
Right.
I had dipped my toe in, but it was when we moved and I didn't have soccer anymore. That was like, okay, here we go.
Yeah.
I'm all in my online business.
Okay. Okay. So now I'm really interested. Like, that's a big jump.
It is.
Right? 13 years you've been in coaching,
Yeah.
high performance training. What reservations did you have going into this? And would you mind sharing just what it was like getting started? I mean, I realize it was 5 years ago, but I still remember stuff from 15 years ago opening
sure.
a gym. So what did you go through? What reservations did you have?
I think, and maybe people will resonate with this, it's a big identity shift. Sure. Huge identity shift for me. Soccer and performance and my body was a huge piece of like who I am and my identity. And so to kind of brush over this like, oh, I started a business and we moved and I went all in and yay, here I am today. Like that's not what happened.
It sounds great though. It sounds great.
Yeah, it does. It sounds, yes, it's a great little soundbite of like, oh, if I can do it, so can you. And that's not at all how it went. That's not at all how it felt. There was some serious like identity shattering that had to happen because walking away from soccer, while I knew it was the right thing, like I had a lot of self-worth wrapped up in performance, like still being able to perform at high levels, lifting at high levels, doing cool shit with my body at high levels. That started to really fade once I had kids. And having that like, oh, I'm a Division I soccer coach. I felt like that really validated me. And let me tell you, for the first like year that we were in Orlando, when people were like, oh, it's so nice to meet you. What do you do? I would say, oh, I was a Division I soccer coach, but now I'm, I just kind of run this little business on the back here. But I would always lead with like, oh, well, I was a Division I, collegiate coach.
You were still tethered to it, right?
And I didn't have that.
Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't have that as like, oh, this is what I do. It was like, oh, well, this is what I used to do, but how do I feel validated. Where's my self-worth coming from? All of these things, and trying to like get online where, you know, people are like, share your expertise and what's your experience and who are you? And I'm like, it was just this like wild space to live in of like, I had 13 years here. I know what I'm talking about, but I don't want to be known as the soccer chick. How do I move forward? And that took some finagling, some figuring out, some floundering around for sure. Like, who am I in this space? How can I show up? Where is my self-worth coming from? Those are conversations and questions that like people don't have online.
Yeah, no, but like, how long do you feel like it took you to work through that?
I'm still working through that.
No, real? Wow. Okay. So then
I would say it was like a solid year before I stopped introducing myself of like, oh, I used to be a soccer coach or whatever. It was, I'd say probably like 18 months of like some serious, like, oh, okay, you're running a business, Allison. This is not just like posting fun stuff online. Like, here's who I am in the space. I'm starting this business and like really going for it. What does that look like? I'd say it was about 18 months like transition, but then it's continued to develop, to deepen over, you know, the past few years.
Well, for sure, right? You go from like this to hyper focus, right? And it sounds like what you're alluding to too. Like, there's a big difference between I post and I want to be like an IG or TikTok or whatever influencer, versus no, I actually run a legit online business, and social media is one piece of that.
Correct.
Right? It's like one of the marketing arms of that. So, okay, this is a perfect segue. I would love to hear about your target market, right? Because again, you're trying to work yourself through all this. You're trying to pump yourself back up. What is my identity? So was this something you were clear on when you moved online, or did you just kind of figure it out as you went?
I think I figured it out as I went, because I was figuring me out.
Yourself out, yeah.
As I went. And I think that's a big misconception. You see a lot of people online, a lot of business coaches online. And I say the same thing, but there's like a second piece of the conversation that's left out. It's like, what's your niche? Find your target market. Who's your ideal client? Who's your ideal customer? Help them, serve them, speak to them. Meanwhile, you're not tethered to anything. You don't know who you are.
Yeah.
In your self-worth and your value. So then you show up online and it's like the wild, wild west of like wanting to be seen, wanting to be validated by these like random people out there that you're trying to like help and serve and show what an expert you are. That is a recipe for disaster. So for me, it was doing the internal work of the identity piece, the healing piece, the like, who am I without soccer? Who am I without coaching soccer? Who am I without like high performance? Like, I went from like professional soccer, Division I athlete as like the identity. I mean, like I tell this story and I'm sure like your athletes could probably relate. Like in college, you were known as your name and your sport. So I was Allison Soccer. Like, trying to like undo some of those like identity pieces is like a big deal. It's a huge unraveling. And so for me, it was unraveling those identity things, rebuilding it back up to know where I was orienting to. And I don't think people orient towards self-worth, towards sufficiency, towards abundance for themselves. It's all these scarcity tactics of comparison and worry and fear and shame. And that's two different places to orient from. And so my work was to do the unwinding and the healing, to orient myself in this like abundance place, like sufficiency place, so that when I went forward in my business, I was like, wanted women to get fucking strong, build muscles, perform well. I was still helping. I mean, my alumni, I still have like at least 5 or 6 of my women's soccer alumni that are in my coaching programs now, right? Like that's awesome. I have all of these athletes that still come back to me because there's a compassionate piece to it, because there's a self-worth piece to it. It's not just, let me help you lose 10 pounds. Let me help you get the six pack. Let me help you get the squat PR. It's more than that. And I think my content online and my business is oriented towards that messaging. Now, do I like slam people over the head with it? No, because if you try and say that online, it's like very nuanced conversation, right?
Absolutely.
Like that shit doesn't land in like the marketing world.
Right.
But that's what I orient myself towards. And so that was the transition for me with the business.
Yep. That's so interesting because you see that a lot with athletes, just in general, right? And for you as a coach, like I'm just thinking through this. Number one, like thinking about the high level athletes that I've worked with over the years, the ones that struggle the most are the ones that don't have like a plan post career.
Yeah.
Right. Like not just, well, similar timeline to you, right? Like they play the sport their whole life, then they go and play professionally 10, 15-ish years. Dude, your entire life, not just your identity, your entire life is wrapped around this.
Yeah.
So if you don't have like some sort of on-ramp into something else, they really struggle. And I could totally imagine this, right? Like I think of myself as a coach.
Yeah.
Right? Like a lot of my identity is tied up in that. That's why even if I'm not coaching at the gym, I'll coach Kendall's soccer team whenever I can, or Kay's baseball team. Yeah, that would be really weird to just like cut that and then move on. And yeah, I would imagine there's a lot of reflection, right? And a lot of soul searching that goes on to try and figure out, okay, who am I beyond this part of myself?
Beyond the business too. I think there's a lot of self-worth like wrapped up in like, how many followers do I have and how's this launch going to go? And, all of the metrics, all of the KPIs that we're tracking, and we track they're KPIs. We track them. We have to. That's part of it. So I'm not saying like, don't track. It's all about self-worth and peace, love, and light. Like, no. But again, like if you're orienting yourself from like, it's only worthwhile if my followers continue to grow, or if I have a bigger launch next time, or like you're constantly moving that goalpost, you get caught in that like if then conundrum, right? Like if I have a big launch, then I'm a successful business. If I have athletes that get PRs, then I'm a good coach. Well, all of your self-worth is wrapped up in like that result. And what if you don't have that result? Like shit just crumbles. And I was tired of like I was there, right? Like I was tired of falling apart. I was exhausted. Like here I am with 2 babies trying to coach Division I soccer with a husband who's gone for 2-3 weeks at a time during preseason, traveling for games like
every other weekend.
Every other weekend. Like that was an MLS. You go to the NBA, it is way worse.
Absolutely.
So it was like I always like kind of chuckle, like people wonder if I'm a single mom because again, Dave's like nowhere. I was like, well, sometimes it does feel that way.
Right.
That exhaustion of that, like I just felt like I had to constantly be working for my self-worth, had to end.
Yeah. No, I get it. Okay. So every business, let's start over. Every business owner has struggles throughout their business, right? But what I found is they evolve along with you, right? And it's not this, once I do this, then everything will be great, right? So I'd love to hear about the evolution, like maybe what some of the struggles were early on, right? 2018, and you kind of already kind of talked about that, but like what were some of the early struggles? And then 5 years in, you've grown, you are more successful. Like what are some of the struggles you're dealing with now?
I think some of the struggles early on, there's like, isn't there some say like if entrepreneurs knew at the beginning like what they'd be dealing with, they would never become entrepreneurs? This idea that I'm a really good coach. Like I can watch people move and like understand like this one cue will fix the rest of this. When you can take like complex things, like you can understand the complexity of movement and the human body and training because you've studied all the physio, right? All of that stuff that like good coaches should be able to do. I can really simplify it. So I was like, I'm a good coach,
Right.
right? Like I know this about myself.
Right.
That doesn't translate to a successful business
No, not at all.
all the time.
Not at all.
So I think that like misconception from the beginning, like, oh, I was a soccer coach, so I'll just do this stuff online and I'll just write programs and people will buy them and this will be great. This will be easy. Wrong.
Right. Yeah.
So wrong. Like you have to be the good coach. You have to be able to spot the movement. You have to like have an emotional intelligence to understand the human, like full, complex, chaotic human that shows up in front of you, even online,
Yeah.
even inside of an app, like their kids are keeping them up. They have a 9 to 5, all that stuff.
Yep.
I'm really good at the relationship piece and the coaching piece, but I had no idea how much time, energy, effort, money would be required of me to actually build the business side that requires systems and planning and structure and marketing and all of the things that like you have to run a business.
Yeah.
At the beginning. That was like a huge learning curve to me.
Yeah. Well, look, I always tell people you better be one hell of a coach when you decide to go out on your own because you just bought yourself a second job, right? You just bought a whole second job, like systems and operations, marketing, selling. Those are all the things just that get you to the point where you can actually just do your job.
Yes.
Right? Like that's what people don't understand. Like there's all these steps. Now you get to coach. And look, I hate to tell you this, there's a lot of people that are really good at all this stuff. They're probably better than you. That it doesn't matter. You could be the best coach ever. But if you can't get this person from A to B where they actually sign on with you, you never get to work with them anyway.
That part.
Yeah. That
For
part.
sure.
Yeah.
That part. I think that's like one of the big misconceptions with social media too. Like it can feel like a lot of smoke and mirrors, and it is a lot of smoke and mirrors. And so it's this like you got to be in it for the long haul for people to like really get to know you and trust you and see like the value that you can bring to them. Like I show up because I know my value. I don't have to work. I don't have to like work for my value online. I don't feel like I need to be validated by people online. And people have to trust that you can solve their problem.
Yeah.
Right? Like even if I'm like, I don't talk about myself as a weight loss coach. I don't talk about weight loss. Period.
Yep.
Now, I don't shame people for wanting to lose weight. We have to like meet people where they're at.
Sure.
Because like diet culture will do a number, particularly on women, men as well. Yep. But diet culture will like screw us all up. I want to meet people where they're at, but I'm not going to market myself as like a diet coach or a weight loss coach or like promise big booty get. Like I don't market myself like that.
Yeah.
Those are flash and pan. Those are like quick things. It's a longer process to get people through my doors. But let me tell you, the right people come through my doors because of the way I position myself and market myself and talk about fitness. And then when those people are inside, they stay.
Yeah.
I've had people in my programs for years because the sustainable approach, the smart approach, like all the things that like aren't sexy actually work. We know they work, but they're so much harder to market to. And I think that's where people get stuck in the marketing online because booty programs and like half naked bodies and like no shame. Like I'm not into the body shaming. I just think as a business owner from a business lens, it's a longer on-ramp when you choose to talk about your stuff in certain ways.
Yeah.
And I've chosen to take a much longer on-ramp.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Well, let's talk about that because I think that's absolutely on point. That's exactly what I do as well. I'm not promising, hey, I'm going to get your shoulder right or your knees bulletproof in 2 weeks, right? Like that doesn't work. Right. Oh my gosh, that drives me insane. But I'd love to talk about that and talk about this idea of building a long-term sustainable business because ultimately, I think that's what we're in it for, right? We don't want people that are flash in the pan, the person that wants like the trial. Oh, can I just test you out for a week? Like by the time somebody gets to me, I want them to know, hey, look, Mike's going to ask for 4 months. Like that's what I do, whether it's programming, mentorship. I'm not going to fix your stuff in a week or two. So we're going to take some time and just know this is going to be an investment on your part because I'm going to invest in you. So I'd love to hear about just like how you came to that point. What made you realize, like, look, I'm just not going to sell what's sexy. I'm not going to sell the sizzle without the steak. What
Mm-hmm.
made you think I'm going to do this the way I want to do it because I feel like it's going to help me build a long-term and sustainable business?
Mm. I think it, for me, boils down to my values and how I want to show up in the world.
Okay.
And I go way deeper than a lot of people do in the fitness industry when it comes to like these ideas. I feel like I'm a little sneaky this way. I do a lot of work offline, a lot of like therapy, healing, anti-racism work that has really affected the ways I show up online. Like
Mm,
I want women to understand their light and their power in a world that tells them you're not enough, and it tells them you have to fit in certain boxes, like the patriarchy and capitalism and white supremacy and these systems of oppression and power structures like keep us small and boxed in.
mm,
And so I do a lot of work offline that looks at those systems of oppression, that looks at like, how do I contribute to them? How do I fit into them? What is my privilege as like a thin white woman in the fitness industry?
right.
What's my role? Like what context are we operating in? We operate in the context of bodies. As fitness professionals, we understand the body, but we don't look at it from like inside the patriarchy or inside white supremacy or inside sexism or misogyny or what, like these big structures at play that we're just swimming in
Right.
all the time. I want to look at those things and fight those things, but not in a way that's like, I'm going to beat my head against the wall. Like, am I going to solve patriarchy with my little fitness business? No.
Right. Right.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
no. And I can also use tools of abundance that can point to solutions and that can point to different possibilities than using shame and fear to make women feel small, that they need to lose 10 pounds and I can solve that for them. So come give me your money.
Right. I
No,
like that.
that's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm going to tell them how strong they can be, how strong their ligaments, their bones, how connected and grounded they can be to their personal sense of power and what that looks like and how that can change their life. That's what I want for them, right? Like, and to me, I'm like, that's fighting the patriarchy because for that one woman, how can she show up differently for her family, for her kids, for her community? Those are the tools of abundance that I want to implore people to like grab onto. So instead of like pointing to like all of the problem, yeah, we have to like point out the problem,
Sure.
but I want to be part of the solution and part of the possibilities. So that's like where my business is oriented towards. Like when we talk about like, where are you rooted? Where are you planted? And I always love like fitness for this because as coaches, we understand like, okay, set up for your deadlift. People are like, yeah, root those feet, plant your feet so that you can
Right.
like push the floor. But when it comes to like your values and how you want to guide people and the type of community you want to build, like what are you oriented towards? Where are you planting your feet? And if you're like,
Yeah.
to make money, to have a 10K month or a 6-figure business, like to me, that's not enough
Right.
to keep me rooted and planted in like where I want to be and where I want to take these women that I'm working with.
Yeah. I love that. So I had this guy, Dan Ueyama. on the show.
Mm.
Uh, wait, Uemara. I get him confused. There's another guy, Ueyama. But regardless, he talks about this idea of your North Star metric. And your North Star metric should be something beyond revenue, right? It's something that
Hmm.
drives your business. Now, maybe revenue is tethered to it in some way, but
Yeah.
your business, if it's just about numbers and just about revenue or whatever, ultimately, it's not going to be as successful, and you're not going to be as fulfilled from it as you
Right.
potentially
You're going to
could be.
get burnt out.
Yeah.
That's where like burnout comes from, because again, like in we're like capitalistic society where like it is never enough.
Yeah.
Like you've reached a certain goal point, like cool, you hit a 10K month and you're like, okay, what's next? Right? Like it
12K.
will never be
12K, then
great.
15, right? Like it's never
Right.
enough. Yeah.
It's never enough. And that's where we get into these like tools of scarcity, because scarcity always works, right?
Yeah.
Like just lose that 10 pounds, just look this certain way, just hit that PR, just make that team, there's always, we live in this society where scarcity is everywhere.
Yes.
You have to actively engage in tools of abundance to like be something different. And I want my business to be something different in the fitness industry. I say where you are more than a number on the scale and more than a number on a barbell.
Yeah.
I can help you move the number on the scale and the number on the barbell. Like that might be an outcome, but it's not my why.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah. Two things I keep hearing. You haven't said them directly, but two things that I always talk about that I know we're
Mm,
pretty aligned on. Number one is selling a vision to our
mm,
clients and to our athletes, right? Because sometimes they come to us, they don't have a vision for themselves. So it's like having a strong enough vision, like seeing in them what they don't see in themselves yet. I feel like great coaches do that. And then second, you talked about KPIs or, hey, I want to achieve this, whatever, instead of the outcome, focusing on the process, right? And the
yes.
building and the development side. Like imagine the growth that you have, even if it is something arbitrary like losing 10 pounds. Imagine the process and what you learn about yourself and your body in that process, like so much more powerful than just being focused solely on the outcome.
Well, and that process can look really different depending on what coach you're working with. Like you
Yes.
want to lose 10 pounds, there's some pretty awful ways
Yes.
to do that.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So we talk about focusing on the process, like what behaviors and like behavior change are you trying to implement for that process? That matters too. And again, like where you ground yourself, where you're rooted to, and what you're oriented to matters.
Yeah.
Because if I want to lose 10 pounds or I want to hit a new PR, well, if I'm going to go like overtrain 6 days a week and like go, you have a all or nothing mindset and I'm going to shame myself and berate myself for not showing up, or I'm like, right? Like,
Right.
ew,
Yeah.
that I will get to the 10 pounds
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
And what type of change have I actually gotten?
Right.
Probably right back where I started, just 10 pounds less. And now it's going to be something else.
Yeah. Well, and you're miserable during that
You're
process too,
miserable.
right? There is no joy in that journey. Okay. So this is a pretty good segue as well, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on messaging, as I feel,
Mm.
I'm not your target market, but I enjoy,
Mm-mm.
like, I always look at things like when I read somebody's stuff online, I'm like, no, I totally get why she says that or who she's speaking to. So how do you
Mm-hmm.
go about finding, or how did you go about finding that right message for your market?
I think so often we can speak to previous versions of ourselves. And so a lot of times when I'm thinking about my marketing, my content, and my message, number one, I'm thinking about my own journey. What's my story? How
Yes.
have I evolved? And extracting some of the messages, like where was I 5, 10 years ago? I take myself back to those stories. I retell those stories, because the thing that connects us is universal human emotions, right? Like feeling isolated after having a baby or two babies with postpartum depression, fear, shame. Like, while not everybody might have been a Division I soccer coach, they probably understand the identity crisis that happens when like there's a big shift in your life,
Sure.
right? So I can tell my story of being a Division I soccer coach and shifting away from that career. And when I tell that story, I'm telling it through the lens of connection and tapping into a universal human emotion that I want to connect with other people.
Yeah.
I think for me to show up online, and I'm like, maybe the gurus or the experts would like say something different. Like, I want to be seen. I want to be seen as a human. I want to be seen as more than just a fitness expert, more than a online business coach. I want to be seen in my complexity. And social media, caveat, isn't like the best place for those things,
Sure.
but I want to bring that humanness into the online space. That's a little dicey
Right.
sometimes. Like
Right.
I will post and like have a vulnerability hangover and be like, was this TMI?
Right.
But I'm running it through my lenses of like, what needs to be said? Does it need to be said by me? How helpful is this? Is this showing people different possibilities? Am I moving the dial just a little bit to show them that there's a better way? And I think my way is the best way.
Right.
Like I'm allowed to
Right.
think that. Can I put content out that's aligned with me and who I want to be as a human, as a mom, as a wife, as a business owner, right? Like all of my identities.
Yep.
And marry that with my experience, my expertise. I know I'm a good coach to move the dial for other people, to show them there are better ways to honor your body, to create better for your life, to like not have to battle that self-worth, that isolation, this like myth that it's just me, that I'm alone, that I have to do these things, that if I journal and meditate and get up early and hit 5 workouts a week and do like, right? Like me.
Right.
We're so stuck in this like me story. I want to show people that like, that's not true. That's not going to get you where you want to go. Now, I use strength and conditioning as like the vehicle, as like the communication vehicle to get people there,
Yep.
the training vehicle. Cause like you're always practicing something. What are you practicing? Are you practicing shame? Are you practicing fear? Are you practicing doubt? Are you practicing like being mean to yourself? You're practicing those things.
Right.
So that like, I just gave you like a very like I'm trying to like bring all of those things into the online space to talk to, the demographic of women who are probably over 30 who identify as athlete in some capacity, like all of these identity pieces and demographic pieces. But that messaging of like, there are possibilities and this is the path to these possibilities for you.
Yeah. So have you ever read the book Story Brand? Or are you familiar with that idea? Okay. So you literally just explained their methodology, right? Like you're telling your story, but here's the unique thing, right? A lot like the best stories, right? And you can talk about just about anything. The one that always comes to mind for me is Star Wars, right? Because I'm kind of a nerd like that. But it's like,
love it.
Like the hero in the show is Luke, right? But the mentor is Yoda, right? And so too many fitness influencers, they want to be the hero and then sell you, hey, look at me. You can look like me versus you are the mentor, right? You're trying to say, hey, look, these are the mistakes I've made. Here are the things that I have struggled with. Let me help you so you don't struggle with those same things. Like literally, that's what you just explained. And I think that's so powerful because too often we get caught up in, like a lot of times when we get in these kind of moments, it's like we're trying to be the hero versus looking at, no, we're farther on this path. Our job is to help the people that are coming behind us so they learn from our mistakes. And so we can hopefully guide and mentor them so that they are happier, more successful, whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think again, like we like to really center ourselves. Like it's human nature. Like I want to be I think I'm like the center of the universe, and being able to like zoom out and understand that like we are interconnected. One of the practices, or one of the things I like to remind myself of is of our interconnectedness. That like I have not just built my business by myself, even as a solopreneur, right? Like
Right.
Allison Tenney Fitness LLC has been, there's been so many people that have contributed to that. And so for me to say like, oh, I've done all of these things to build a successful business is just a lie.
Yeah.
And we have to remember like our interconnectedness as like humans in general. And I like to come back to that idea of like this idea of separation, of being alone, of like doing things on your own, of like, oh, I just work really hard and so I'm successful. Like those things are half truths.
Yeah.
Can feel a certain way, but the truth is you're not alone. The truth is people believe in you. They want to help you. And I like, maybe it's like rose colored glasses and sometimes it like does bite me in the ass, but I like to give people the benefit of the doubt. And again, like speak to our highest self.
Yeah. So I'm just finished up this book called The Psychology of Money. And it sounds very...
I've heard of that one, and I want to read it.
It's really good. But one of the things he talks about there is the difference between optimism and pessimism. And one of the mistakes people make is they would assume that an optimist just thinks everything is hunky-dory, right? Everything is perfect. That's not what an optimist is. An optimist is somebody that just thinks over the long haul, things, i.e. my life, will progressively get a little bit better. That's all an optimist is. It's not like, oh, everything's going to be perfect and I can light my house on fire and, like, it doesn't work like that, right? I can't just not parent my kids and they're going to be perfect. It doesn't work like that. But, if you do the right things, over time, things will get progressively better. And I think that's such an important outlook to have, right? And again, it comes from that place of abundance versus scarcity.
Yeah.
Very powerful.
And I wish more people in the online, like when you're running an online business, it's so important to like be grounded and connected to that. And it sounds like a quit, like, oh, okay, on this podcast, I can tell you like be connected to your values. Like that takes a lot of work.
Yeah.
A lot of work. And most people, if I was like, what are your core values? Like with the women that I work with in my business, to help them run their online business, like, like, oh, I don't really know. Like, what's your why? And they start, you just get like dribble of like, I want women to be strong and confident. Oh, okay. We all want women to be strong and confident. Cool.
Right.
But like deeper, more detail, give me more. That like work, people don't see online. Number one, I'm not sharing that online. All you're seeing is like, oh, Allison's content hits differently or it lands differently or what. Because I've dug into what are the tools of scarcity? What are the tools of abundance? How can I lean more towards abundance and gratitude? And again, not everything's like peace, love, and light, right? But like
right.
I have mentors and communities and places to practice and push me and get really fucking uncomfortable
right.
offline to be able to show up in my business online and have content that lands the way it does, to have my website look the way it does, because I've written that copy. I'm directing all of that stuff, like, again, because of the like internal work.
Yes.
And I think people really shy away from that hard internal work and to be brave enough then to like put it out on the internet because we're really scared of getting trolled, of being canceled, of getting dragged, of what are people going to think, or who does she think she is? And I'm kind of like, this is who I think I am. And if you don't agree, there's the unfollow button.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm going to go cry. Like, but people are like, oh, I don't care. No, I care a lot. I'll go cry and be butthurt to my husband, but I'm not going to stop.
Right.
Or it's not going to prevent me from my mission, from my why, from like my values.
Yeah. So important. Yeah. Look, just to give you a frame of reference, people will anytime you're creating content or putting yourself out there, there's no filter on the internet, right? People can say whatever they want. I mean, you
Mm-hmm.
guys know I create a lot of content for IG, YouTube, all that good stuff, podcast. But like literally, I put up a post the other day and had a hashtag on YouTube. It was leg workout. And the guy was like, I don't think this is a good leg workout exercise. This is more of I'm like, dude, we're really arguing about a hashtag right now. So again, people will say what they want. It's okay to be butthurt for a second, but don't let it stop you, right? Like I get annoyed too. And initially you're going to want to respond to everything, right? I went through that phase. Oh, no, 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 you're wrong. And here's why. And next thing I know, an entire day of my life has been spent arguing with some random internet troll that lives in his mom's basement, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus, hey, you know what? There's 1,000 other people that saw this and it made a positive impact on their life. So having that kind of just vision and having that perspective is important. So let's talk about content creation, because something we're both passionate about, something
Mm.
as a entrepreneur, especially as an online entrepreneur, you got to do. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Why is it important? And what tips do you have to making yourself show up even on days you don't, or just being more consistent about content creation as a whole?
Mm. For me, content creation is like the first filter. Like I know who I want to work with.
Yep.
I want sustainability in my business. I know the type of client that I really vibe with. And so if I'm not putting out content that speaks to that, then I'm not going to attract the right type of people.
Sure.
So number one, if you're only putting out, what you think is trending or popular or cool or gets likes or will go viral, you're going to attract people that you don't want inside your business. I have a 3-month, you have a 4-month, I have a 3-month minimum inside of my programs. I'm like, because I write in 3-month training blocks.
Yeah.
I want people that are like, oh, I know the value of a plan. I know I'm in it for the long haul. I understand this type of sustainable, compassionate approach. That's why they come through my doors. So my content better speak to that.
Right.
So that's number one, is my content acts as like the front door to my business. And I want that to like be the filtering system that I'm using to allow people in. Because also the way my business is set up, you can go on my website right now and join my program. Like there is no application. There is no like, oh, I let like a wait list where maybe like you can just go on my website and sign up. So again, if my website isn't clear, if my content isn't clear, you're going to sign up and be like, whoa, this is not what I was expecting.
Right.
And I really pride myself on integrity is one of my core values. And so I want my communication to be really super clear about like I post my prices. I am just really clear about exactly what you're going to get, when you're going to get it, because I'm managing your expectations as a client that is going to be inside of one of my containers. And I see my containers as this like compassionate, soft place for you to land and do the fucking hard work, right? Like,
right.
I know I talk a lot about compassion and like all this kind of deeper stuff. And also you're going to work.
Yeah.
it takes hard work.
Right.
It's a both and. So when I'm creating content, I want to speak to the possibilities, my mission, my values. I also like having fun. Like I will dance on social media. I will do trend. Like it has to be fun. That's one of the tools of abundance for me, is showing you like, I'm going to like it. It's not that deep.
Right. Right.
Right. Like this ought to be fun. It's like you miss a day. Like I don't care that much. I also want to show up and be like, we're doing fitness, people. Chill.
Right.
It's not brain surgery. You're not. Yes, we're saving lives. I get it. Like you can go down that rabbit hole and also lighten up.
Right.
So that I use that as like a filtering system.
Yeah, I like that. You know, one of the things that I've tried to do is whenever I record something, cut it up, use it multiple places. I think that's just a standard piece of advice. But one of the things I actually took from Julia Glanz, who was on this show a couple months ago now. She's amazing. I think the
Mm.
world of her. But one of the things I asked her a similar question because she's got a very strong audience. She's got a very strong message, knows her target market. I said, well, you post like super frequently. Like, how do you not burn yourself out? And one of the things she said to me really resonated. And she just said, look, I like give my permission to not have a great day every day and show up in
Mm.
the way that's best for you. Right. So if it's today you feel great and you're just, everything's awesome. The sun is shining. You had a great workout, whatever. Okay. Hey, that's the day I'm going to go on and I'm going to do a lot of like light, bubbly stuff. There's other days where I'm just not feeling it. Right. Maybe I'm more introverted for whatever reason. Hey, that's the day I'm just going to do like a typed post or something
Yep.
like that. Right. Like find ways to show up in whatever level of energy you have available that day. And I think that's such a sustainable way to do it. It's just like when you go in the gym, right? The people that
Right.
burn out and crash and burn are the ones, oh, my HRV's tanked. I slept 3 hours last night. No, I'm hitting a PR today. Like those are the people that burn out, right? It's not
Right.
sustainable. So find ways to make it sustainable. I think it's so important. That's like a
There's
key
such
theme
a
for today, right? Sustainable.
Yes. There's such like a connection. Like I love using fitness as like the communication vehicle because again, when you're talking to at least my target market, like my niche, are women who want to strength train. They
Yeah.
already understand the value. I'm not trying to convince them that like you need to do this. It's more like how do we find the time? What's the plan look like? Is this the right fit for you? So when we talk about like fitness, the connection is there. Like, what is your capacity on any given day?
Yeah.
I'm posting. Yesterday, I posted 3 times.
Okay.
I had 3 posts that I created in real time and posted 3 times yesterday. Most of like my posts are made that day in real time. For a lot of people, that is not possible.
Yeah.
But it's possible for me because one, I've done the work to really understand my message so that when I see trends or things that I'm like, oh, that's a cool way that that creator did that, I know immediately how to recreate it for
Mm,
me and my business and my audience. So
oh,
I
that's
can take
smart.
trends pretty easily and recreate them, be like, oh, this food blogger did this thing and it's turned, you can go into like the audios and be like, okay, top performing posts, they're all kind of following this like kind of structure. Cool for the fitness industry and for my audience who wants to hear about compassion, sustainable approach to strength training. I can do it this way. And then I just go do it.
I love it.
And a lot of times I tell my business people this too. A lot of times I feel like most of my posts, most of my social media is really C plus work.
Right.
It's passing. It's
Yeah.
C plus. On a good day, when I'm like, my capacity is more, I'll really feel. But again, I'm not like doing the cover photos, and I'll forget hashtags, and I'm not like I don't follow a lot of the rules. But every day, I'm posting at least once, maybe 2 or 3 times a day, and it's that cadence and that repetition that now I don't need to write out like some big plan or whatever. Like my brain is just looking for
Right.
ways to run it through my own filters.
Yeah. Yeah. You gotta take some in to then put some back out. But yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay. One more, and then we'll kind of start to put a bow on this. But
Okay.
for the audience, a little backstory as to how this particular show came about. I obviously follow Allison, obviously think highly of her. And she posted somewhere, I don't know, you can help me out here, if it was a story or a main feed post, but she's just talking about, this person that's like, oh, let me tell you about my 2 hour morning ritual. And immediately, like, you're like, nope, this is not for me. Right. And I just had to DM her. I'm like, oh my God, all the yes. Right. Because tell me you're a 24-year-old life coach without telling
Mm.
me you're a 24-year-old life coach. Right. We have kids, right? Like my morning routine is, hey, I'm going to get out of bed. I'm going to make sure Cade gets out of bed, feed him some breakfast, comb his hair, brush his teeth, get him on the bus with minimal complaints. That's my morning routine. So
Mhm.
with that being said, I would love to know how you juggle all the things in your life, right? You're a mom, you're a wife, you're a worker bee with your own business, you're a human being. So how do you make it all happen?
I don't. I think one of the rackets that is run on all of us is that there's some magic way to like make it all work. Right. I think the post that you're referring to, it was something, and again, I was like scrolling and I saw somebody else post something similar about being a female entrepreneur, and I was like, oh, that really resonates. But for me, it looks like this. Right. It was like, I'm more interested in the female entrepreneur that's running her business at the sports events, at school pickup line, in between breastfeedings, in the wee hours of like, not from the 24-year-old millionaire that's traveling overseas and showing you her travel blog stuff. Like that doesn't resonate with me. It just makes me feel bad about my life. And I have an incredible life that I have actively chosen every step of the way.
Yep.
And I'll still feel bad about my life because I'm watching some 24-year-old millionaire. Like, good for her. I want all of us to fucking get it and win, but not at my expense of like doom scrolling.
Right.
So when we talk about like morning routines and like how do I do it? Well, for me, I never feel like, oh, I'm doing it all and look how successful I am. That just is not how it lands or feels on the inside. My morning routine looks like Dave, like nudging, being like, get the fuck up, Allison, let's go. And I'm like, I'm not a morning person. And I say like, I'm not a morning person, of course, a behavior change person. And then I have all of the things of like, but you could be a morning person. But if you got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, Allison, you could have your workout done. You could have, right? Like that is going. And there's this huge like my work is turning that volume down. The misconception is that we can somehow heal or do routines or meditate or do the thing that like that will go away, that I can somehow magically like make that go away. I no longer think that. My practice is to turn that volume down because my morning routine is also getting my kids, like I'm like literally so regimented, like get up, get my kid up, then brush my teeth, then get downstairs, pack the lunches, take one kid. I mean, I'm the one that's like taking one kid to school, coming back, feeding the other one breakfast, then taking that kid to school. It's like over an hour of like all that stuff, right? Like that's my morning routine. And then after that is when I get to, okay, now I get to sit down, have my cup of coffee. I'm going to scroll social media, catch up on my DMs. What are the trends for today? What's kind of going on the gram? Right. What are my emails like? Like I will bop around. I'm like, maybe I time block, but not intentionally. Like I just fall into different rhythms. I never feel like I get it all done. And my best friend calls it the Allison way. I'm a sprinter.
Yeah.
Like not as like an athlete, not like an athlete, but like
I get it.
This athlete mentality of like when I start something, I can't help myself. Here's a perfect example. My website was a hot mess. I hadn't really touched it since 2018. And I had launched a program called Alpha. So my two signature programs are the Den, which is more basic and foundational, not beginner. And then I introduced Alpha, way more like high level, geared towards like athletes, like, right? Like 5 days a week. Okay. So those are my two signature programs. Alpha wasn't even on the website. Okay.
Yeah.
Like I launched it like offline, like did the whole thing. So the website was like, no, maybe I should add Alpha page to the website. So what do? I meet with my designer who now has an agency and a web page. We redid the whole thing.
Yeah.
Not just like add the Alpha page. It was like a whole new platform, a whole new design, like everything. And we did it in about 6 weeks, which to do for a website.
That's crazy fast.
It's insane. And let me tell you, there was a weekend where I didn't get out of my pajamas. Dave was like, are you okay? And I was like, absolutely not.
Right. Yeah.
Right? Like, but people don't see that. They just see the beautiful website. How does Allison do it all? I don't. And I sprint hard on projects and then I'll have to pull back and kind of recalibrate. And I don't mind fucking shit up. I hope we
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
square. Like
Yeah. Totally fine.
I will mess things up. And again, because of my content and who I attract and who's already inside my inner circles, they'll let me know like, hey, your website thing, like this didn't really work. I'll be like, great, I'll go fix that. And oh, that email didn't send. And okay, cool. Like there's a trust factor because of my ecosystem that I have also created that I really appreciate.
Yeah. That's cool. That's cool. Okay.
So no, I don't do it all. Like
Yeah.
to wrap that up in
Yeah.
a bow.
Yeah.
I
No.
don't do it all. And I know how to sprint hard. I know how to do C plus work. And I really trust the people that get through that kind of first door because of the content,
Yeah.
because of the alignment there.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. Okay. Big question time. If you could
Okay.
alter the space-time continuum and give young Allison Tenney one piece of advice, what would it be?
This is like when we talk about what was the book you mentioned, the story thing?
Oh, story brand.
Story brand.
Yeah.
This is an exercise that I did with a coach who taught me how to like tell stories. I have like a brand story that literally the advice that I give my younger self is play big.
Mm,
I have this picture of little 8-year-old Allison as a soccer player that like is the inner child that lives in me. And I always want to go back and tell her like, play big.
I like that.
Too often we get put like, I was this like little wild child like out on the soccer field. And it was the only time I felt really free. Like, you know,
Yeah.
when you're like in the zone,
Yeah.
that freedom of movement, that freedom of like expression, that was soccer for me growing up, and being on the field was one of the only times I felt that way. And at some point I stopped that because of society standards, because of what it meant to be a strong woman and all of the boxes that like it just gets like
You
tighter
got
and
put
tighter and
in.
tighter and
Yeah.
tighter. And so to be able to go back and tell her, play big, break those boxes, like don't put yourself in them.
I
That's what
love
I would
that.
say.
I love that. And if you're a dude listening to this and maybe don't resonate with that just yet, have a daughter.
Mm.
Have a daughter. And then like, oh, now I get it. Right? Now I get it. Okay. Lightning round. 4 fairly short questions. Your answers can be as long or short as you like. Number 1, favorite part of owning your own biz and or working online?
The flexibility. I want to drop my kids off at school. I want to pick them up. I want to go to all of their stuff. So
Yeah.
the flexibility that running my own business offers me, I post half my content sitting in my car.
Yeah. There you go.
I love that.
That's the saying about entrepreneurs, right? You get to choose the 60 hours out of the week that you get to work. Nobody else tells you.
Absolutely.
You get to choose. Okay. Flip side of that. Least favorite part of your business or content creation, and how do you still make it happen?
It is, I can't stop.
Okay.
I like when you talk about like, oh, you know, get offline and take a break and have I'm terrible at that. So like full disclosure, I'm terrible at boundaries with social media. Now part of it, like I love creating, like my
Yeah.
brain, my personality, the way I create, I'm good at it. And so like when you're good at something, you double down.
Yeah.
And I have doubled down on the content creation. So part of my internal struggle is like, I wish I had better boundaries. I wish I would get offline more. And I like being there. I like hanging out there. So it's kind of like a both and for me. I need better
Yeah.
boundaries, and it's what I'm good at.
Yeah. No, I get it. Side piece of advice for people that are struggling with that: figure out which medium is best for you. Right? Like if you if you like to educate and help and coach, one of those is going to work, right? If you like to write, start a blog or do Twitter threads. If you like, short form video, you can do TikTok or IG or YouTube Reels. If you like long form video, YouTube, longer videos. If you like audio, you can do a podcast. Like there is a platform for basically everybody now. You just got to figure out what works best for you.
Yeah, finding like that magic lane. Like I am not on TikTok. actually started on TikTok.
Yeah.
And that's how like Reel, because I was creating the TikToks and pulling them over before Reels started. That was
Yes.
really the only time I was on TikTok. But I'm not on TikTok. I don't do like I am on IG because again, that's where I have the capacity. That's where I'm fast. Like I will just put out a post and hit publish. Like
Yeah.
I
Love it.
am not sitting on content. I'm just putting it out. It's literally just drop in the bucket. 24-hour, you're on a 24-hour
Absolutely.
time reel, right? Like people are
Absolutely.
like, oh, let me plan out. I'm like,
No.
nobody is watching you that closely.
Right.
And if you are that self-centered or egotistical to think that like people care that much about your content, like you got other things to think about. So I'm just like post and move, post and move, post and move.
Did you get that from Shantae? Do you know
That's
Shantae?
a Jill Coleman thing.
Okay,
I
so
love
Shantae.
Shantae.
Yeah, so they're
Shantae
like
and Jill are
people,
like,
yeah.
Yes. So I did Legacy, which is their intermediate like business coaching thing, probably like 2 years ago.
Yeah, I love them. They're so smart.
Yep.
So smart.
They're so smart.
Okay. Real question, number 3. How do you deal with Dave on a day-to-day basis? Is that why you put him in pro sports? So you get like breaks from time to time?
Oh, Dave. It's so interesting too, because again, people are like getting real insight into my marriage and just how wonderful that man actually is. He doesn't get enough credit around my business side of things. I think he's more of a support than anything. And the way, because we were both soccer coaches, because we both understand what it takes to be successful at what we're doing. He travels a ton. He's in pro sports. Like his job is very demanding. I signed up for that.
Right.
I know what that entails. And I'm running my own business. I'm not like concerned about because we have our own interests and because we're both independent, secure people. It's always this give and take, supportive relationship.
Yeah. I love it.
So dealing with, like, it's funny, like he's in charge of the family schedule.
Wow.
I think people think like have like a misconception like, oh, Allison must be like running around like crazy doing all the things at a very young age. Like when our oldest, who will be 13 in February, when she started soccer, like a very young age, I was like, I cannot hold anything else in my brain between like writing programs and my clients, right? Like Dave deals with a team. So he gets like very specific, but like online, I felt like I was just managing so much. Like I'm not doing the schedule. Dave has always been in charge of our family schedule. So every day we check in. I'm like, what do we have tomorrow? I'm like the Uber, right? Like I connect all the dots. I make it all work. But he's like, okay, Quinn has soccer practice from this to this. You drop her here. I'll take her here. Then you need to pick her up from here. Like he's coordinating that.
Yeah.
That's all him.
Yeah.
Now, of course, like, when he travels, I do those things, but he's just as much contributing and understands my drive and is not threatened by any of those things, which I think is important in a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell him he's gonna be getting a text soon. He needs to come back.
I was asking him, I'm like, how far back do you and Mike? I was like, is it from I remember years and years and years ago, him and like Mike Boyle and probably you and Patrick was it like the strengthcoach.com forum was like the thing.
Wow. Yes.
Yeah.
That was a thing.
Yeah.
Great memory. Oh my gosh. I'd almost forgotten about that. But yeah, I remember interacting with him there and coming to Seattle and doing the Sounders before I was even in the soccer space. I was just like, this guy's a savage. Like I want to learn from him and great networking, great events. So all right. Last but not least, number 4. What's next for Allison Tenney? What are you working on? Excited about? Anything? What's your next sprint?
My next sprint. I have this idea.
I love it.
I don't know if it will happen in 2024. So I just finished the website, which now feels like really authentic, wonderful landing place for people to like find out about me and my programs and my style. Like that was a
Yep.
huge project. I also just hired another co-coach for Alpha. So I have a co-coach who basically, and now they're head coaches inside of the Den and inside of Alpha. So I'm kind of growing my
Right.
team there. Those are all things that happened this year. What I would love to see moving forward for my business is a platform that can like house everybody. We're so disjointed between like where they go for their programs and like how we interact online. I don't have like a Facebook group. It's
Oh,
never been a thing.
I
I'm not
hate
a
Facebook
community
groups.
manager. I see myself as a coach, right? Like I don't do that stuff. But I have a 6-month like mentorship program called the Wolf Pack where I do programming and we do more deep dive mindset work. I also have
Yeah.
FitBiz Collective where it's like 3 months business online business coaching. I want a space where like all of those people can like meet and congregate, and people are now building out their own personalized platforms for that. So I would love to have a platform where the Den members and Alpha members and my business members and Wolfpack are all kind of in their little container
Yeah.
inside of a
So,
platform.
okay, this is random. And
Okay.
if you're still listening, listener, hopefully this will be of value to you at some point. First off, Allison, if you find something, please let me know. What I've started using here lately is Circle.
Yeah.
Have you done
I've heard
anything
of
with Circle?
Circle. I've heard of Circle and I've heard of Mighty Networks.
Okay. No experience with Mighty Networks. Circle is
Okay.
great because you can put people in different areas, right? So you can just have a general area, right? You could have a Wolfpack area. So the Wolfpack area has access to the Wolfpack and the general area, right?
Okay.
So pretty slick. We're using it with iFastU. I do it with my mentorship group. Kind of like
Okay.
it. I'm working on making it more robust. So as I flesh it out, I'll send it over to you so you can
Please
check it
let
out.
me know. Do you like the user experience?
I
Like
do.
what do your clients say about it?
Much cleaner than Facebook. And they're adding stuff all the time, right?
Okay.
Like they just added polls. You can drop videos in, like you can create courses in it. It's pretty slick. Pretty slick. Circle, if you're listening, help your boy out. Throw me a sponsorship or something, man. Come
Brand
on.
deal.
That's right. Brand deal for Circle and RTS/iFast.
Yes.
Well, Allison, this was amazing. Thank you so much for your time. Where can my listeners find out more about you and all the great work you're doing?
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I am living my best life on Instagram. I'm at Allison Tenney, 2 L's, and my website, AllisonTenneyFitness.com.
Love it. I will get those links in the show notes. And again, thank you so much for your time. This was amazing.
Appreciate you, Mike.